Stan Lee presents, oh, hey, that's me, The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones. Excelsior. Welcome.
It's time for The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones.
The ultimate hero in the ultimate adventures.
I don't know. I'm making this up as I go.
Pack your bag, grab your passport, and prepare to go globetrotting with classic four-color adventures of Indiana Jones.
Jones?
Jones! Mr. Jones, I've heard a lot about you, sir. Your appearance is exactly the way I imagined.
I'm here now. What do you want to talk about?
Hey, welcome IndyCast listeners and Further fans. This is The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones. I am Joe Stuber.
And I'm Keith Voss. And Joe, we got back-to-back Further Adventure segments on the IndyCast. I mean, it feels like the old days when we were reviewing all of the Marvel comics. You remember that? You remember when we were doing that?
We used to put out we had content. We had issues that we have issues.
Oh, we have issues.
I know.
We have issues.
We had
Joe,
34 of them that we could talk about.
More issues than the Further Adventures of Indiana Jones.
Exactly.
Sure.
But we've got all these great guests we were able to tap into. So, let's talk about like last month. If you missed our last segment, we talked to Lee Mars. That was our special guest in the Raven's Nest. And then another guest set to join us today. And then next month, we're even going to have another special guest. We just wrapped up that interview here recently.
A couple of big ones.
Yeah, yep. And we've got our Crystal Skull commentary for the 15th anniversary of the film. So people are, look, if you weren't sick of hearing from Keith and myself before, you're going to be really sick by the time Indiana Jones 5 comes out.
And a lot of people are going to be sick when they're watching Crystal Skull.
Oh, no, we love that movie. I love that movie.
I didn't say us. I said a lot of other people will be probably sick. They don't get a lot, not just really the most liked Indiana Jones movie.
We're talking about the Indiana Jones comics. One thing we do want to mention, this is something, look, we've been doing this for, over 10 years. And a decade of doing this on the IndyCast, and we've talked about all the Further Adventures, and we've talked about all the Dark Horse comics, and we've talked about all the adaptations, and we've interviewed a billion people. And if you've missed any of it, go back. They're on all the IndyCast. One thing you and I have never caught, and I was flipping through the Omnibus recently, one of the Dark Horse...
Blew my mind.
Omnibus, whatever we're calling them, in preparation for another guest that we're going to be interviewing. You'll find out more about that soon enough. But flipping through, and I see... Lucasfilm Presents. Well, you just heard Stan Lee, the great Stan and Man Lee, say Stan Lee Presents. That's how each issue is introed, right? In the Marvel comics. Yeah.
Always was, except until they...
I look at these omnibus and they put Lucasfilm, present.
Lucasfilm Presents, right? No, a lot of stuff changed over. But look, we've also caught over the years, we've caught a lot of changes that have been made to... Yeah.
For the better.
Comics. For the better.
We'll give credit there.
Let's call them like the special editions, right? They are the Further Adventures, what the special editions were to Star Wars, right? Like they kind of, recolored some stuff and added a few things, changes some stuff. But you don't change the Stan Lee Presents.
No, Stan Lee Presents. Stan Lee Presents, you just heard him.
Come on.
He just said it.
But we haven't noticed. That's something else that we just haven't noticed that. It just kind of popped up. Kind of blew my mind, to be honest. I was like, what?
So I put that out there.
How could they do that?
Right. I put that out there on maybe it's a Lucasfilm. Maybe it's a Lucasfilm. Yeah. But the other thing I wasn't too happy about was you see the credits at the bottom. I'll just look at issue, I think 25 it is. Linda Grant, scripter, Steve Ditko, penciler, Danny Bullinotti, inker, Diana Albers, letter, Robbie Kursola, colors. They left off Ralph Macchio and Jim Shooter, the editors. They took them all out on all the books. Why'd they do that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we should talk to Ralph Macchio about that.
They edited them out.
Maybe we will talk to Ralph Macchio about
it. Who knows?
Okay, so there's that. So we want to get that out of the way. So we just figured that out. Maybe you listeners out there already knew that. I don't know. You didn't tell us. But anyway. Look, as mentioned, another fantastic guest had to join us today. She penned the Dark Horse Comics adventure. Speaking of Dark Horse, come on, get that right, Dark Horse. Indiana Jones and the Spear of Destiny. That was December 1994. Keith, not the first time we've discussed this tale on Further Adventures.
No, it's not. IndyCast 251, right? That was our 6th anniversary special. Oh my goodness, where we reviewed that 4-issue miniseries. So if you haven't heard that review yet, of course, by all means, after today's IndyCast, after we're done with all this stuff, be sure to check it out. But right now, we do have a special guest waiting at the VIP table. Joe, it's time to head on into the Raven's Nest to chat with indie writer Elaine Lee.
Joining us now in the Raven's Nest is an Emmy-nominated actress and writer. Her epic stage story, Starstruck, has been adapted to multiple media projects, including the comic book world. And of course, we're talking about the comic book world. Indiana Jones, he's been represented in comic book form, including the adventure Indiana Jones and the Spear of Destiny, written by none other than Elaine Lee. Elaine, welcome to the IndyCast and the Raven's Nest.
Oh, well, hi. Nice to be here.
A round of drinks for everybody? Is that what we're doing? Special guest at the VIP table?
Oh, we're starting already, huh? We're starting off already. How's it feel to be back in Manhattan
at the Ravens? Well, we figure if we get everybody liquored up before the interview, they go so much better. So we'll do.
Sometimes they remember stuff more, sometimes less. Let's see what happens.
At least Hey, we're definitely going to talk about this Indiana Jones tale. Keith and I really like this one, but first we want to go back a little bit further. I mentioned Emmy nominated for your role on The Doctors, right? This was Mildred Trumbull.
Yes, I was Kathleen Turner was in the soap opera, and she played the young evil woman. There's always two. There's an old evil woman and a young one. And she had made all the other characters mad at her, so they needed to give her a sidekick so she'd have somebody to talk to.
Wow.
So I was the comedy relief sidekick.
Oh, okay.
To Kathleen Turner's bad girl character.
Wow. Jessica Rabbit herself, huh? Amazing.
Yes, yeah. So, and she would hatch evil schemes and send me to do them, and I would screw them up. That was sort of,
What were those days like? Because I've actually spent some time on a soap set. I've shot some interviews and different things, and I know the amount of dialogue. It's like it's such a fast pace, and they're just cranking these things out. One taken out. So, what do you remember? Kind of what that life was like back in the, I think we're talking about early 80s maybe, or going back to?
It was like 79 and 80.
Okay.
I was on, for a while.
Yeah.
And wow, you get nervous. I remember when I was first on, I asked one of the guys who had been on a few years when he stopped being nervous. And he went, oh gosh, for at least a year I vomited before it went out every time. Wow. And I'm still nervous. It never stops. But some of the older actors I remember would use, they would just read everything off the cue cards. I couldn't do that. I had to feel like I was in the scene,
Yeah.
But it was, you had to kind of learn it loosely because they would change lines during the rehearsal and stuff. And if you learned it too hard and fast, it was hard to do that.
Yeah, the turnover must be crazy doing that kind of stuff.
But most people aren't on every day because they have all these different story veins running through the soap. So I was a supporting character. So I usually, I might be on 2 days of the week or whatever.
Okay. And then go out and do auditions and stuff.
That kind of thing.
Was acting your first love?
Probably art was. And then I planned to be an art major in college. And then I had a really good art teacher in high school, and the people at college weren't as good as that, and I got bored with it, and I started taking some theater classes. But most of the people I know who are in one art do other things. You see all these actors, like I guess Jim Carrey, and there are others who paint, who do other kinds of art. So I think it's not unusual for people who are artistic to be able to go from one kind of art to another.
Exactly. Why restrict yourself, right? I mean, if an artist is an artist, they'll do it all.
Then there's the thing of sometimes you make money if you stick to something. I always said, every time I threaten to make
sometimes
money,
is the key word.
Well, I think I see some of these things overlapping then, because you mentioned about theater classes. I'm kind of wondering if this is what led into Starstruck, because founding member and artistic director of the Manhattan Theater Company, Wild Hair Productions. I think this was with you and your sister, Susan.
Yes. My family, my sister, my other sister was the choreographer for Starstruck. It wasn't dance; it was movement, because we were playing cartoonish characters we had exaggerated movement and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
and her husband
go ahead.
played a character, and my ex-husband played a character, and so there was it was kind of a family and friends company.
Okay, so there's the acting coming in, and there's the writing and stars. So the Contamination of the Kokomo Lounge was one. Brief Lives, I think, was another stage performance you did, and then Starstruck. So walk us into Starstruck, because I'm going to full disclosure here. I'm not as familiar with it. I know it ended up being a Marvel comic, I think, for a while, right, in their Epic line.
Yes.
Okay.
That was sort of at that time. It was when the collectors thing was really crazy in comics.
Yeah.
And for issues of something like the X-Men would be hundreds of thousands of copies sold, whereas I think the graphic novel sold 72,000 or something, although I think an overrun was sold that was never kind of properly counted. But we had, after 6 Epic comics, or when it was coming up on, they had put out 3 or 4 of them, they said, we're going to cancel it. We thought we were supposed to have 12 issues, and we ended up with only 6.
6, right.
Epic.
Keith, did you snag the Starstruck comics?
I didn't. Unfortunately, when it came to Epic Comics, I was reading stuff like Dreadstar and all that stuff. That was more my bag when I was growing up. So
because this thing,
unfortunately not.
Didn't this thing took on a life of its own, because it's been. I think, walk us through some of this, because it's been a radio play. I think we know a little bit about radio play.
Yes, we do. Right up our alley.
Yeah, we went to Dark Horse and after Marvel.
Yeah.
And we did 4 issues. Again, we were supposed to have more issues, but Michael, he was suffering from burnout. It's such a labor-intensive project.
Yeah.
So that ended. That wasn't canceled, but Michael just, he went, I don't think I can do this. So, nothing happened with it for a while. And then within 2 weeks of each other, we got calls from these guys with an audio drama company, and Scott Doombeer from IDW called. Really, it was within a 2-week period, both of them interested in it again. So then that's how we went to IDW, and we did the big collection that was recolored. It wasn't everything that we had done. It was just some of the books we had done put together in a collection and recolored by Lee Moyer, digital color. So because we had been the old, I guess the first graphic novel at Marvel was colored by these guys in Spain. It was probably Blue Line or something.
Okay.
But we did the new color, and then we did the audio drama. I rewrote the play. The play's been rewritten a few times too, because we had the play, and then we had a actor's edition of the play that came out later. The first play had a lot of art in it. It was a big oversized book. But the second publication, same publishers, Broadway Play Publishing, it was a new version. And I sort of went back into the play because we had been doing the comics for longer. And there were things that we had put in the comics that I then went back and sort of rewove into the play so that it reflected the material that had been in the comics.
Okay.
So there's a lot of going back and forth and things changing over time, and things not just being reprinted, but reprinted with changes in both the comics and the play.
Yeah, it keeps taking on new lives and reaching new generations. And then what is Dimension 20, A Starstruck Odyssey on Dropout TV? What is
Okay. Well, my son is a writer, producer, talent, person. He started working for College Humor. They do funny videos on the internet. That's what they had been doing. And there was a series he did that was funny CEOs. The first one was Don't Eat the Tide Pods or something. Okay. And which a lot of people, I think about over 8 million people have seen that one. But then he created Dimension 20 for Dropout, which is the streaming service that College Humor started. So Dimension 20, it's my son and 6 other improv actors, improv comedians playing Dungeons and Dragons. And he makes up stories. It's not just one long game. It's a lot of different settings. One might be urban fantasy. There's one set in the magical New York. There's one that's like John Hughes' high school film, only with wizards and orcs and things.
They're doing all kinds of stuff.
Oh God, all kinds of things. And so, for one of their seasons, people had been asking them to do science fiction season, and my son he's been more of a fantasy guy, but also because he's making up like 3 or 4 settings a year. And science fiction is a little more time consuming to do. It's more specific than fantasy in a way. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So he's like, how am I going to do this? And he went, well, I'll just option Mom's universe. They didn't use the characters. They used the universe.
Yeah, they adapted it into like something else, like different stories. It's like an offshoot, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And now there's, I can't talk about it yet, but it's going to go into another medium.
All right, that's it.
We'll see what happens with that. And there's more in the future, so that's
okay.
It's funny that because it was always a cult comic. It never made us a bunch of money, but over time it keeps popping back up, and then
it still has life. Still has life.
Yeah. So yeah.
Well, with Keith, all the streaming services, Keith and I watch these streaming shows all the time. It just seems like that would be perfect, right? To have this epic universe.
I think it's time. And with some of the stuff that they've put out lately, Willow, I mean, we definitely could use a breath of fresh air with some new shows here.
Sometimes I feel like the problem with some of the movies and TV that comes out that's, science fiction or fantasy, is that the people who make it only watch the movies and the TV shows, and they don't read the books.
Oh, absolutely. I actually even question if some of the writers even have watched the original movies or source material, because some of the stuff that comes out that's acting as sequels or a continuation of the story just makes no sense to me. Even from style to just storyline, character motivations, I just don't understand it. So yeah, I totally know what you mean there.
All right. Well, we know you can't discuss it in depth, but when it hits Netflix or HBO Max or Paramount Plus, whatever, you'll come back on the IndyCast and tell us about it. Right?
Or better yet, get us a part.
It might not be what you think when I said medium. So
interesting.
See what it is.
Oh, some virtual reality thing. Maybe we'll get Laird in on this and get some virtual reality thing. All right, curious. Keith, are you ready to talk Indiana Jones and the Spear of Destiny?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Let's talk. How did you get this project?
I pitched it.
Okay.
They were doing Indiana Jones books, and I had a thing. I really had a lifelong love of Celtic mythology and Arthurian legends and that sort of thing, and I didn't especially love the Grail Indiana Jones. I thought
Last Crusade.
They kind of took it so far away from the version of it that had, trickled into Arthur. So I feel like I wanted to do something about that, and so I thought the spear, because it appears in Celtic mythology, is the spear of Lugh, the battle-waging spear, and then it appears in Arthurian legend as the not Arthurian, well, Arthurian and in biblical as the spear that pierced the side of Christ as he was on the cross and that kind of thing. So I wanted to pull it into that Celtic realm and to kind of continue that story and be able to use some of the material that I loved so much. But I did make it a continuation of that. One thing I loved about doing Indiana Jones is you absolutely know, if you've seen the movies, what the structure of your story has to be. You have to have a scene from the past, Indiana Jones doing something in the past. So I made that the very end of the Grail movie.
Perfect.
And then your story goes from there. So I pitched it, and Diana Schutz was a big help to me. I'm thinking she was an editor. I'm trying to remember everything. She was an editor at that time, and she sort of championed me because I think I got a little bit sidelined and put on a pile on a desk, and she helped see me through that process.
Yeah,
and
Diana Schultz, I'm looking at the credits, editor-in-chief at Dark Horse at that time.
She was great. Of course, she might not have been editor-in-chief when I first pitched the thing.
Okay.
She may have had a different job.
Was there a long period of time?
By the time it came out, because it takes a while to make these things.
Yeah, was there a long period of time by the time you pitched it, till the time it was released? Because I think, what did we get here, Keith? Like 1995, I think this one, right?
It was 95,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Was there a long time between pitch and completion?
Yeah, because I don't remember how long it was, but I remember that I heard nothing for a long time, for quite a while. And then things started to move. I don't remember the specifics of it because it's been quite a while ago.
Okay.
But I do remember that she helped make that happen, and I'm very appreciative of that.
Well, one thing that we thought was interesting when we reviewed it too was that not only did you go back and bring that capper of Last Crusade, the end, the riding off in the sunset, but you got inside Sean Connery's head, where you have him question like I should have stayed, I should have become the Grail's guardian, but I was weak, unworthy. Like we got this like little glimpse. What made you think to do that?
Boy, I don't know. Probably the Grail stories themselves. Because a lot of the Grail, there are different knights that go on these Grail quests, and some of them achieve the Grail. Some of them don't get anywhere near it and can't even see it. Like Lancelot, because he had betrayed his friendship with Arthur, I guess. And then some, I think Gawain got about halfway, and so there are different, it was probably because of that, because there was that idea of some of the knights, even the great knights like Lancelot, not being worthy to do the whole thing. So that probably could have been where I got that idea.
Yeah, because Henry Sr. was right there. He drank from the Grail, right? So it seemed like it would be a passing of the torch. Because the knight even said to Indy himself, I now pass the responsibility to you. So it was a very interesting way to start that story, and setting up also Henry Sr. as a character in your story.
Well, that was a thing. That was a really lucky thing because they were telling people they don't want you to use the Sean Connery character. Nobody was supposed to use it, and I did. And they, who did they send it to? Spielberg? They sent it anyway. They sent it and to the movie folks, and they liked it, and they let me use the character.
Oh wow!
So
fantastic.
Be careful about who. When it's characters like that, you can't just do anything with them that you might want to. You can't kill them.
No, but it's nice that you didn't listen to the mandate and you did what you wanted to and just figured, well, if they don't, then you're no worse off. But
right.
We wanted
you did what you felt was right for the character.
For the story.
That's where it worked, and yeah.
It's interesting. The books open with a quote from you. Keith and I wanted to ask you about this too. See if this sparks any memories back in the day. It says, "To the memory of Captain John M. Waters, Jr., USCC, my very best uncle and source of all things military, and the largest character I've ever known. With special thanks to my teacher and friend, Alexei Kondratiev, whose favorite mythology I've ruthlessly pillaged in the process of creating this story." What can you tell us about that intro?
Oh, my uncle. He sort of has the he had. He's long gone now. He had the personality of Foghorn Leghorn. He's a military man, and he was very blustery, and he sang sea chanties and
oh, excellent. Pay attention to me, boy.
he was really, my sister was his favorite because she was a tomboy, but Susan. But I called him when I was working on this and said things like, "Okay, were there submarines in the Irish Sea at this point in time?" "Oh, yes." "And what kind were they?" And he said, "If somebody exploded a mine under you and you were in a boat on the surface, what would you hear and see?" And he went, "Well, you'd see the flash first because light travels faster than sound does. And then you'd hear a boom, and then a big thing of spout of water would go up into the air." And so I put it in that way. And so he gave me tips about, World War II and North Atlantic. And he wrote a book about called Bloody Winter that was about war in the North Atlantic. So he was very helpful. And that was probably the closest I was to him, because I was I'm more of a inside girl, not an outdoor girl. So that was really nice. And my teacher also, he's gone now. He was a linguist. He spoke like 30 languages. And, and he loved the Celtic ones. He kind of lived for time in all of them. And in childhood, he spent a lot of time in Brittany, and his family, his father was Russian, his mother was French. They each spoke English better than they did each other's languages. So he grew up with all of those in the house, as well as Breton. So then, of course, he became a linguist and then taught mythology and Irish mythology and language at the Irish Arts Center in Manhattan, down in Hell's Kitchen. So I say down in Hell's Kitchen because I lived on the Upper West Side.
I would say it too. I'm also on the Upper West Side whenever I go to New York, so I know exactly what you mean.
Yep, but I have to laugh at the Marvel Universe stuff when they talk about Hell's Kitchen, because I spent so much time in Hell's Kitchen, and
well, Daredevil, right?
Nothing horrible ever happened to me. Nothing bad happened.
You never saw Daredevil flying in?
Daredevil is that's his neighborhood, Hell's Kitchen, right? Hell's Kitchen. They call it Clinton now, right? So it's
yeah, no,
doesn't sound as dangerous anymore.
They tried to call it Clinton. Nobody calls it that.
Nobody calls it Clinton. Exactly.
Well, you mentioned the folks at Lucasfilm, that they had to sneak in that, that you had to sneak in an approval from Henry Jones Sr. on that. But did you have any? I know a lot of comic writers and artists. John Byrne famously had problems working with Lucasfilm. Did you have any challenges that came in? Like, do you recall any problems on the book or anything you wanted to get in?
It was just a case of, I wrote the thing, they sent it to them, they okayed it, and that was it. I never talked to anybody there.
Okay.
I'm sure that it would have been relayed through probably Diana. But
okay.
But nothing ever came to me like that.
Did you read the books when they were done?
Did I? I'm kind of funny about that, because
okay.
I had I'm sure I read through them when the art was coming in.
Yeah, Dan Spiegel, the late great Dan Spiegel.
Art is fantastic on these books. I mean, and also the covers by Hugh Fleming, which fantastic.
Had you worked with Dan before?
No, and it's not like when you work with creator-owned stuff. Will Simpson, there were some time things that screwed up about that, because Will was supposed to do a lot more of it than he did.
Yeah,
Right,
he's
he only
on-
did the first issue,
Right.
right? He only did the first, and then
Yeah.
Dan Spiegel
Dan
did
took over.
issues 2 to 4, exactly.
Yeah, but Will and I knew each other because we met at the Glasgow Comic-Con and became friends. And Charles Vess had introduced us to each other because we were both interested in Celtic mythology. And then we went, oh, yeah, we're both interested in Celtic mythology. Let's write a vampire book. So so we did that for Vertigo instead. And then this kind of was supposed to get us back to the Celtic thing. But I love Dan's work. It was some things weren't working out. Will had other irons in the fire.
Mm-hmm.
So many great moments in these books, Keith. Let's talk about some of them. One of my favorite lines is Nazis in Ireland. Can a man go to the corner pub without tripping over 2 or 3 of these guys?
It reminded me very much of Last Crusade. I mean, it was laid out. I mean, this is complete. All of this book has Last Crusade DNA all over it, right? Yeah. Nazis, I hate these guys, right? That's all. It's all over this book, and that's another reason why. And plus, I have Irish heritage as well. So this was a story for me that really, really is one of my favorites throughout all of the Indiana Jones stories. It really got me interested because, again, I have Irish heritage, and it just, that little bit of connection there. It seemed all very authentic and all very real and all very much that, yes, this is exactly what another item that the Nazis would go for afterwards. So it was all very, very well done.
Yeah, that line is straight from Elaine Lee, right? That line is straight from Elaine Lee. Correct?
Well, I hope so.
Okay.
If I sound vague on some of this, it's because it was a really long time ago, and I haven't sat around thinking about it all this time. I never answered your question about Dan, though. All of that was supposed to lead up to the fact that I didn't really work with Dan. I sent my scripts in, and the editors sent it to Dan.
Okay.
So I got the art back to do coloring. I got Xeroxes to do coloring, but that was about it. So, but I love the art.
Oh, that's right. You are listed on here for colors. So
yeah, you
were...
also did the coloring, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I did two of the epic Starstruck books, and then time got to be a problem, so we got another colorist on that. But I also, I colored some New Mutant stuff, and I colored, Charles Vess did the Warriors 3 that came out of the Thor books. It was a side, spin-off. I colored that. I colored a few things. So,
book looks great.
Yeah, another one of our favorite moments, Keith. Let's talk about that, issue 3, because Elaine always had to get Indy in trouble all the way through 4 different adventures. Elaine, do you recall strapping a giant boulder to Indy's feet and tossing him in a lake to drown?
Oh, yeah, those lakes where the Celts threw shields and swords and things.
Uh-huh. How did you come up with that idea? Because not only is it a great moment in the book, it leads to one of the best indie comic book covers of all time from Hugh Fleming.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really nice. I love that cover.
Yeah. What gave you the idea to dump to pull a mafioso cement block kind of
cement shoes?
Yeah, and how did you come up with the idea that he finds artifacts at the bottom of the lake, so he uses those to get out of it? It was brilliant. It's one of the brilliant escapes of Indy of all time.
Definitely.
Yeah, well, of course there have to be artifacts at the bottom of the lake. It's Indiana Jones. And there are quite a few of those lakes that have artifacts in them, around the world, around the Celtic world. So, formerly Celtic world.
Did you call your uncle and say, would these be at the bottom of a lake?
No. I would have called my teacher, except I'd already taken all his classes twice, so I really didn't need to call him. I just needed to thank him.
Was that the toughest thing, to just keep finding ways to get into? Because the mythology is the mythology, but you got to pick up the pace and get the action going and get into. Was that a sticky part for you to figure out how am I going to keep getting them in trouble?
No, because all stories from the beginning of time are about people being in trouble. That's what mythology is. it's always a war, or somebody is tricked, or somebody is murdered, or somebody,
And one of the best things about Indiana Jones is he always gets out of it. But and we've talked about this on the show before, even though we know he's going to be all right, he's going to get out of it. It's it's what leads up to that. How is he going to get out of it? When is he going to get? Oh my goodness! It brings us to the brink, and then we get the payoff, and that's again something else that your story does very well. What do you think was then one of the biggest challenges then? Because you said getting Indy in and out of trouble wasn't really that big of an issue for you. What was for this book? Was there anything that you got stuck on, or anything that you couldn't figure out story wise? Because we've also, like on the IndyCast, we've written our own IndyCast radio dramas. We've written indie stories before, and nailing down the story sometimes isn't the easiest thing. I mean, that's a problem that Spielberg and Lucas had themselves, and it seemed like it came pretty easy to you.
It was really fun. But, the first thing I did, I can't remember if I did something, I probably did something that was published before Starstruck, but that was certainly what I was writing. Mm-hmm. And that was so complicated and so dense. And Indiana Jones, I had seen the movies, I had seen the movies all a few times probably. And it was so in my head how the stories had to go. And I knew I wanted to go around I knew I wanted to go Ireland, and I think it was Glastonbury next, and then Wales, and then back to Ireland. I knew I wanted to see
them back to Ireland, then in New York City at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, because the Irish material, I was using mostly from the Irish material, the Celtic myths of the Spear of Lugh, and then Glastonbury was the Joseph of Arimathea, was sort of central to it, and then Wales had the lake, and there is some Welsh poem that deals with Arthur and the spear and all of that. So I kind of had an idea just because I read all that stuff and I knew the movies so well. And then you have to go, there's always a girl, so I put the girl in, there's always I put a younger guy because time had gone, and I thought, Indy's getting a little older now, he's not his dad yet, but he's older. And so is it going to be harder for him to, run and jump off a cliff or whatever he's got to do?
So you were doing this before they did it in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. You were already thinking age-wise for Indy. Yep.
Yeah, and I put the young sidekick in there. So,
that's right.
Because of thinking, letting him do some of the stuff that was youthful.
Everybody that's we talked about, I remember when I went back and listened to our review and we kind of went through this. The ending, when you get the Spear of Destiny, right? You got the Spear of Destiny, mm-hmm. and it like all the Indiana Jones stuff kind of happens at that point, and this thing takes a life mm-hmm. of its own and starts nailing like all the bad guys, right? Like mm-hmm. we kind of had like a Yondu vibe from it, like the little whistle and the arrows that he does.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians of the Galaxy. Did that have any impact on you, or did you just want to see a spear flying through the air?
It is right out of Celtic mythology. The Spear of Lugh, you have to keep its head and it's in the Arthurian myth. You keep the head of the spear in the cauldron, in which it boils all the time, because if you take it out, it'll fly around and start killing people.
Uh-huh. So Guardians probably got that from the Celtic mythology then.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. All right.
Yeah.
Chicken and the egg? Well, we know where it is now.
Yeah, it wasn't that. That was probably one of the only thing hard about that series was getting to do it in the first place.
Yeah.
And, but actually doing the writing and all that, it was just fun. And part of it is, I had done that big project, Starstruck, that I had no parameters. I could do everything I want, and the universe was just chock full of crazy stuff. And this one, because I had parameters, because it had to have the Indiana Jones structure, and it had characters that I already knew, and it was based on a mythology I already knew, and some of the World War II stuff I had my uncle I could talk to about. So it actually was really painless and a joy to do.
It comes through in the book. I mean, you can see that it's it was written by somebody who really enjoyed what they were doing. So, and I mean, it comes through, and we as readers and we as lovers of Indiana Jones and lovers of stories like this, I mean, it makes fun so much more fun to read.
Well, and it's a super cool sequel to Last Crusade, and it's kind of nice to get your input in that this is your version of Last Crusade.
Exactly.
I like that perspective of it. Like, well, if they went down a different road, it might have been this.
Yeah, I just like that. I just like the Celtic mythology, and I was very into it at the time, really doing a study. And I thought, I just want to, continue it. They've done the Grail. I can do the spear.
Very cool.
It goes hand in hand. Yeah,
what are you working on now? What's what can we expect from you right now? What are things going on?
I am working on a Starstruck related thing that I can't tell you about.
But you will when it can. We'll get you back.
I have a novel that's taunting me because it's just sitting there for a long while. Because I have a part-time job. I'm the marketing director for an arts organization, so I'm doing that some. I had tried to retire from that last December so I could just go back to writing again. But the person they hired after me didn't work out, and it was a mess, so I come back for a while.
They had to call the legend back. That's right. They knew how to get things done.
Oh, well, we'll see. But I do want to get these projects. I would like to get these. I have a couple of things that I'm working on, that 2 different writing things, and this other Starstruck thing, which is some writing, but I can't talk about it.
Okay, no, we get it. There's a lot of things, but it's ElaineLee.us is the website, right?
Yeah, and the Starstruck one, if people are interested in that, is starstruckcomics.com.
There's that, and you can get to that, I think, from ElaineLee.us too. So if you're there, there's a whole Starstruck drop down in there, and it leads to a whole universe. I mean, we could do a whole podcast just about that. But yeah, keep an eye on that. We'd love to chat about these things, but Elaine, like Keith and I said, it's a terrific follow-up to Last Crusade. We love Spear of Destiny. So glad you got to tell this indie tale for us. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us about it and joining us on the IndyCast.
Well, thank you. I'm excited that people are still interested in it. That it's got some. It's always a happy-making thing for me to find out that way after the fact, somebody is that interested in something I did that, they'll call me about it. So I really appreciate it. We've been doing this podcast along with Ed Dollista and the rest of the gang since 2007. So we talk a lot about Indiana Jones. So there's only 5 movies. Well, 4 and whatever we get now. So.
With a 5th coming and maybe some comics.
We always did. We love the comics and we love this adventure.
Yes.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, there you have it, IndyCast listeners, our interview with writer Elaine Lee. That was a fun one. Hope you all enjoyed that out there. Keith, wrapping it up here. Let's put a button on it. What are your thoughts?
Amazing. I loved hearing all of the background info, all the good stuff on Spear of Destiny. It was really great to hear just the origins of the story. Just what it took to get it down on the page. Again, we've talked about this before on the IndyCast, right? How much we loved this one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It is a good one. It was just such a pleasure talking to Elaine. She's great.
Always good picking the brain of the writers as we get into these things. We certainly love doing that. We certainly have a lot of content for IndyCast listeners out there over the past couple of segments. So that's out there. We'd love for all of you out there listening in to weigh in on these conversations. As mentioned, Lee Mars last month, Elaine Lee today, another great guest coming up here. So what do you think? Not only about the interview, but what are your thoughts on these Dark Horse indie adventures that we've been talking about over the last couple of segments? Keith, if they want to get a hold of us, if the listeners want to talk to us and tell us their thoughts, how can they do that?
Well, like always, just go ahead and email us at thefurtheradventures@gmail.com. You can also comment or message us on our Facebook page. And as always, we want to hear from you guys.
No, okay, that's it for the day then.
Okay, Further fans, that is all for today. Indy is telling us that we need to wrap things up, but we shall be back on the IndyCast very, very soon.
Indeed we shall, Joe. Indeed we shall. Next episode, in fact, going from the world of Dark Horse Comics Indie Tales back to the OG original comics, the indie comics that we love and we talk about here whenever we can, the further adventures of Indiana Jones. And we got the editor of Marvel Comics during those golden years when we were getting monthly Indiana Jones comics. Ralph Macchio will join us in the Raven's Nest if he's not too busy working on the new Cobra Kai season. Right?
Always
is it that?
We promise
we
will.
Macchio?
No, it's the other way. We'll promise to keep Karate Kid references to a minimum. I'm telling you, I cannot wait. It's been a while. We've been wanting to have Ralph on the show for so long. That is going to happen on the next episode. Can't wait for that. Marvel editor Ralph Macchio talking further adventures of Indiana Jones the next time we get together on the Further Adventures of Indiana Jones.